And now for this example, I will try to demonstrate um, how property binding works and explain it on the way how it is actually done in Angular. First of all, we will generate our component, ng generate component. I'll name it property binding. Okay. Now we will go inside our property binding.ts file, and we will set some variables here. For example, I will create a variable name again containing John, and then in our HTML element, I will remove this, and I will create an input with a type of text ID with name ID as the ID and value of name in interpolation way, and that's it for now. And then create another input type inside a div um, with a bracket. Now value, that's the value of that, and then name. Okay, as you can see, this is how we do it in interpolation, how we pass the variable name to the HTML file and then to the user interface. But in this one, we will do it in the property binding way. I made this so that there's going to be a comparison with um, property binding and interpolation. So as we run our server using ngserve, then while we wait for it, always remember that for interpolation, it's brackets, and for property binding, it's braces. So as we access it, our um, and then as of now, it's blank because we didn't put it here, our link to it. So app dash property binding. As we save it, it's gonna show that John and the two input fields are John, because as you can see, we called this name John name variable in our input field or input element using interpolation, and we call this name John um, using property binding. So for a much better view, I'll put h3. I'll label it property binding, and then here at the top, let's put this inside a div, and then um, interpolation, then do it like that so that it's gonna be much more visible for your end where is interpolation and where is property binding. um Basically, if it's only strings uh and and other stuffs, it's gonna work in interpolation, and it's also gonna work in property binding. But when it comes to boolean functions, basically in interpolation, whatever is inside, like example, it should be a boolean, but it will always read it as not a boolean. So like for example, um we created a variable there called disabled, and it's equal to true as a boolean function. And then here in our html file, we'll also add a interpolated disable variable. Okay, as you can see, now it's disabled because the boolean it will close that. The boolean value for the disabled variable is true, so it should be disabled. Wherein in our property binding example, it should also be disabled, wherein we can put it that way, and it's gonna be disabled. But the big difference is, what if our input box or text box is not in a Boolean value of true. What if we change this to false? As, as you notice, property binding only follows the Boolean expression for this variable. Interpolation does not follow it because for interpolation, it only gets the string value of true. It only gets the string value of the variable disabled. So it's basically still um, complying to the condition that there is gonna be a value for the variable disabled. So it doesn't matter if it is true or false, as long as there is a value for the disabled. This is still gonna be true in the case for interpolation. So if even if you change the disabled variable into false, it won't affect because it's not reading the variable as a Boolean expression, but it's rather a string function or a string expression. Wherein here in our property binding reads the disabled variable as false. Excuse me. So as you can see, uh, the variable disabled in our TypeScript file is false. Wherein if we change this to true, in our property binding example, it should be also disabled. So now it's clearly much better to use property binding compared to interpolation if it's related on Boolean functions or Boolean expressions. For the reason again, I'll repeat for the reason that in interpolation, it does not read Boolean expressions. Rather than it reads most likely string expressions and ignores um, the Boolean type of the variable. Wherein in property binding, it reads Boolean expressions or Boolean type of the variables. So whatever is the value for the Boolean expression, it's also gonna be applied in the property binding. That would be all. And I'll show you a much higher level of example after this demonstration. Thank you.